Okay, I did my project a little bit different than probably a lot of the other ones you're going to see tonight. Rather than really defining a problem, I kind of asked a question. It was something that was pressing on me, and I was curious about it. And what I was wondering is whether or not there is a paradox about the concept of what the family structure is in a rural area versus what you'll find in an urban area. I've never used the clicker before, so where do I aim it at?
Just slide to next. Just slide your cursor over the word next.
You want to just click on the button on the left.
The left? Okay. I'll just use this. How's it?
Okay.
Okay, so I asked, is it a paradox? You know, and something that inspired me, I read a New York Times article that was called Red Family, Blue Family. And in that article, the author, he talked a lot about this concept that we believe that people that live in more rural settings live in more traditional type families, you know, a nuclear family with a man, woman, you know, 2 kids, that kind of concept. But this author kind of intrigued me because in his findings, he kind of said that it's not so much what we think, and that if we do a little more research, we might find the opposite is true. So, for this project, I took 2 community college districts, one of those being Lakeland College, which I use that as my rural district, and the other being Oakton Community College, which is an urban district located on the north side of Chicago in Cook County. So, to do what I wanted to find, I wanted to calculate the distance between the number of people that lived in non-traditional families compared to the total families. And by doing that, I was able to get percentages. And I'm gonna save that map for last because I think you'll be very interested to see it. So I'm gonna build anticipation here. Now, this map shows politics. This is voting trends here in Illinois. This is from the 2008 election. Now, a little disclaimer about it, it's probably a little bit more skewed than the average year would be, but it's the most recent map that we have statewide that we can accurately depict how people vote around the state. So as you can see, in this area right in there, which is where we are here at Lakeland College, it's mostly Republican. So you would argue more conservative, more traditional mindset. And as you can see in where Cook County is, where Chicago is located on the map, it's very blue and very progressive. So that kind of, you know, that adds to the idea here. So the purpose of this was I was seeking to kind of, you know, look at this and be able to kind of compare and contrast these 2 different regions and be able to make a clear conclusion. You know, this would be really good for somebody who might be interested in trying to look at data and compare how people live in different locations. And I think I think when you see these maps, you'll be really intrigued because you will see that it really does depict that. Because, you know, you can do that simply by going to American Fact Finder, which is what I use to get my data. And you can really find some interesting ways to compare data in different regions. And I think other people would be interested, you know, people that are social scientists, like myself. I am a political science major. I love politics. I love people. I love studying people. And I think for people who have my interest, this is a really interesting thing to research. So, the data that I used for this project, I used mostly shapefiles. There was a lot of shapefiles in this. I got those from I believe it's the Tiger data from Esri. And I looked at individual census tracts. So each and every single one of these that you'll see on my map was an individual census tract. And I calculated the number of non-traditional families that live in each individual census tract. And I used lines also in this project. I used it to map roadways. There's a map where it shows all the major roads in Illinois, so I included that so that way you get an idea of where places are located. And I worked a lot with attribute data because you had to compare and contrast a lot of this data. You had to be able to accurately work with attribute tables and to fuse them together, which I'll talk about here in just a second. here's the database attributes. I use, as I said, the American Fact Finder website. And specifically, I focused on data that centered on families that had children under the age of 18. So 18 and under was what I focused on specifically. And something I had to do in order to get all of my data to flow together properly was I had to fuse together, well, join together, the American Fact Finder data with the Tiger data. And in order to do that, I had to make sure that it all matched up. I had to make sure, I think, it had like a GeoID2 number, so that way it matched the same numbers as what they had with the Tiger data versus the data from American Fact Finder. And I was able to merge the two together and was able to create a final project with that. Analysis. I was able to clearly analyze with this data how just the difference, and it was really interesting to see the difference once I was able to look at it and see it clearly laid out on a map. And I probably should have included this sooner, because I'm sure some of you are like, okay, just get to the map already. And I applied the same analysis on both Lakelands District and on the Oakton District, so that way I was able to, get a clear picture of what it looks like. And upon my conclusion, I found out that there is indeed a paradox, because a lot of us probably believe the rural areas have more traditional families than the urban areas. And there we go. This is Lakeland College's district. And as you can see, based upon my legend here, you can kind of see the individual census tracts. The red tracts represent areas that have higher numbers of traditional families. The purple ones kind of represent areas that are, well, as it says there, between 21 and 30% of the people in that area, or well, of the families, live non-traditionally. And as I also found in some of the tracts, you have some where it was as high as almost 40% live in non-traditional families in this area. Now, when you compare this with Oakton, which is North Chicago, you'll see a lot of red up there, which is something you probably wouldn't expect, because this is a big city. This is a pretty liberal area as well. And as you can clearly see, though, there are more traditional families in that area. I mean, any area that is shaded in the darkest red is less than 10% of them are single-parent households, or same-sex, or whatever you might want to think. That means that over 90% of those households are married families. And that's kind of different than what we'd expect. We would think it would be here, where people have a more traditional mentality about life. So it's kind of an interesting comparison. And the next slide will show you the two side by side. And this kind of allows you to make more of a comparison of the two and see that there is a correlation here between the two areas, and showing how their family structures are. So I think that's all I've got for tonight. I've included some data sources. These were the sources that I used. Like I said, I used Esri's Tiger data. I also used American Fact Finder for our major highways, which you can see also included. I found that on it's the University of Illinois. And underneath of all those was a county map, so you could kind of get an idea of, so it helped to distinguish between the different areas, and I found that on the census website.